All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome. We'll wait to get a few more attendees in here and we'll go ahead and get started. Thanks for joining us on this start to the week. We appreciate your time here. Well, I know we'll get more in here as the session gets going, but I'll go ahead and introduce myself and our um, presenter for the day, and just thank you so much for being here. We appreciate you spending your Monday either mid-morning or lunch session with us. My name's Susie Gray. I work for National PKU Alliance. I'm the Director of Development, and I also help on the operations side. And I have Sarah Gallagher here joining me as well. You may have seen Sarah on our community calls. She's our Director of Community Engagement, and she leads a lot of our work that you may have seen with our mentor group, advocacy with our affiliates. So Sarah will join as well, and she has a 15-year-old daughter, Maeve, with PKU. And then happy to bring along with us Dr. Eugene Lubliner. Eugene is no stranger to our PKU community. He has been a psychologist for over 15 years and has a lot of experience in the school space. And we're just lucky to have his expertise and experience to share with all of you today. And so, without further ado, Eugene, please take it away. And thanks so much for joining us.
Uh, Thank you very much, Susie. Thank you, Sarah. I'm really happy to be here. This is, obviously a huge passion of mine. So I'm gonna get right into my presentation. I'm gonna share it. Just give me a moment.
Oh, and I guess we were just talking about this. One thing I didn't mention for questions. So, at the bottom of your screen for Zoom, you will see a Q&A feature. We will be holding time at the end for questions and answers. If there is something that if you don't want to forget it, go ahead and you can submit the Q&A. We will be allowing time at the end for that. So just know that we'll have plenty of time to get your questions answered. So you can hold them until the end, or if you do have something, we'll just make note of it and address that towards the last 15-20 minutes or so.
Great. All right. Everybody can see my presentation here. We're good. All right.
Yes, looks good.
All right. Thank you. All right. Well, I'm very happy to be here presenting for the NPKU again. I always think it's important when we start a presentation like this to kind of tell you my story, how I became involved with these presentations. So, in October of '09, my wife Kristen and I were married. And then in April of 2013, our first son Dominic was born. And then in September of 2015, our daughter Adelaide was born. Now, when Dominic was born, it was I would say, run-of-the-mill pregnancy. I didn't even know a newborn screening was a thing because nothing happened when Dominic was born. However, in September 2015, when Addie was born, we had our newborn screen, and a week after she was born, we got a very familiar call to that a lot of people in the audience today are probably quite familiar with. Our pediatrician called and suggested to re-administer the newborn screening. She told us this is probably just a fluke. False positives happen all the time. Just take her to get newborn screened a second time, and I'm sure everything's going to be okay. And us as parents of two children at that point and rather sleep deprived thought, okay, we'll give it a go. We'll see what happens. And we waited another week. And that second newborn screen did confirm our daughter Adelaide's diagnosis of PKU. And in very short order, we were introduced to the whole team that I'm sure, like I said, everyone here has a lot of experience with. Going to the clinic, meeting our geneticist, meeting a nutritionist, a genetic counselor, and in our specific situation, a whole lot of phlebotomists, because in our clinic, we only do venous blood draws. So it was the start of a very stressful journey to care for a child with PKU, and it's a journey that everyone here is on right now. And here they are today. This is Addie and Dominic. In addition to caring for my daughter's PKU, there is a lot of orthodontic work that happens, and as you can see in this picture, but it's all worth it, every bit of it. But all kidding aside, kind of the wonderful kind of happy accident is my daughter having PKU and the work that I do intersect pretty significantly. I've been a psychologist now for 18 years. The bulk of my work has been in schools pre-K through 12 for the last 15 of those 18 years. As a result of that, I do a lot of planning for children with various handicapping conditions, including creating modifying and maintaining 504 plans. So, what are we going to cover today? Well, we're going to cover what is a 504 plan, and then how do you go about requesting an accommodation plan from your school. And we're also going to touch upon some appropriate accommodations that you may want to include in a 504 plan for your child with PKU. So, first things first, what is a 504 plan? According to the Office of Civil Rights, Section 504 is a federal law designed to protect the rights of individuals with disabilities in programs and activities that receive federal financial assistance from the Department of Education. Um, Emphasis there, financial assistance. Basically, the exact wording of the language from Section 504 states that no otherwise qualified individual with a disability in the United States shall, solely by reason of her or his disability, be excluded from participation in, be denied the benefits of, or be subjected to discrimination under any program or activity receiving federal financial assistance. The Office of Civil Rights is the office that enforces 504 programs and activities and make sure that people's rights are being upheld if they receive federal financial assistance from the Department of Education. Recipients of the federal financial assistance, people that receive this money include public schools, any most colleges, and state and local education agencies. Um, I'll kind of address the elephant in the room right now. Obviously, things are very rapidly changing at the federal level, in terms of what the Department of Education does and does not do, what the Office of Civil Rights does and does not do, which governmental agencies are responsible for the creation and implementation of these regulations. Um, so we are in a bit of a state of flux here with these pieces of legislation, but Section 504 still exists. 504 plans, my strong suspicion is not are not going anywhere. Um, the pathways in which you enforce 504 plans and 504 legislation is probably going to change very dramatically in the next couple of years. Um, Basically, a 504 plan requires that a school district provides a free and appropriate public education to each student with a disability in their school district's jurisdiction. Doesn't matter the nature or the severity of that disability. And to provide that free and appropriate public education, the school may have to provide aids and services designed to meet that child's individual education needs, um, so that they are met as equally as a non-disabled student. So, we already kind of briefly covered this, but who can you request a 504 plan from? Any public school, because public schools, by definition, accept federal funding. Some private schools, not every private school accepts federal funding. That's on a school by school basis. State colleges and universities, and I will also say some private colleges and universities. Um, and then any workplace that receives federal funding. There is some confusion between what an IEP covers and what a 504 plan covers. Um, 504 plans are a much broader category. Okay, a 504 plan is for a student with any disability, and it focuses on how the child learns. Um, there are less rights and recourse if you are in disagreement with the 504 plan, or you feel the 504 plan is not being enforced properly. They don't, there are no goals, there's no progress monitoring set up on a 504 plan, and it is not a special education program. This is not, your child would not be placed in a special learning environment as a result of a 504 plan. Um, the school does not have to necessarily seek parent input to develop a 504 plan, but I don't know of a single school that does not get parent input. The school can make changes without parental input, but again, I don't know of a single school that actually goes through with this. And it applies, like I said, to any school receiving public funds. Now, you contrast that with an IEP. Students must fit under one of the disability classifications set forth by IDEA, the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. Um, it allows, in addition to accommodations, allows a child to receive specially designed instruction, placement in some form of special education class. It has much more detailed outlined goals and progress monitoring in the document. And there are more procedural safeguards for parents. And the school is required to include the parent in every step of the way of the decision processing. Um, the Department of Education at the federal and state levels oversee IEPs, and all public schools must make IEPs available to eligible students. And there's also a required annual review meeting. Now, what they have in common, both of them, they're all free to parents. All of them, an IEP or a 504 plan are used to help a child with needs access a level playing field in school. And it does require some form of an evaluation process, either an IEP or a 504 plan. So, how do we request a 504 plan? Um, when we're talking about high school and below, universal pre-K, elementary school, middle school, high school, your best first step is to just contact one of the building teams, either an administrator or someone in what we call, in New York at least, pupil personnel services. So that's the building principal, the school psychologist, the school social worker, or a school nurse. You can even contact a district administrator for special education or pupil services. Um, any one of those people, and in fact, all of those people, should be able to point you in the right direction if you are looking to request a 504 plan for your child. Um, I highly recommend that you request it in writing, either via a written letter or an email. If it's not in writing, it never happened. We want to hold schools accountable. We want to make sure that we are being able to very clearly identify when we're making these requests. It also helps before requesting a 504 plan to prepare some documentation on your end, written proof of a diagnosis and recommendations from your PKU team, the geneticist, the dietitian, your pediatrician, your genetic counselor. And also be prepared that in addition to the documentation you provide, that you will have to complete some medical forms and demographic forms that the school district wants you to complete, even if it's redundant. The every school district has their own record keeping and paperwork process. After you make the request and you provide the documentation, and the school gets the documentation that they need completed by you, um, you will eventually have a formal 504 meeting. Who attends these meetings? Well, of course, you'll be there, the parent. In some cases, depending on the student's age, the student themselves attend. But there will also be a 504 chairperson, meaning someone from the school district that is responsible for kind of overseeing the meeting. Generally, it can also be a classroom teacher, the building principal, the school nurse, the school psychologist, the school social worker. Any or all of these people in some combination will be at the meeting. At bare minimum, it could be just the 504 chairperson and the parent. Um, Obviously, we hope that there are some people with medical knowledge, like the nurse present, and people that are actually having a stakehold in teaching your child, like the classroom teacher present. But at bare minimum, it would be you and a chairperson. Um, and then at that meeting, got a little ahead of myself. At that meeting, you're going to create a 504 document. And we'll get into what those 504 documents look like in just a couple slides. For post-secondary, like if you're in college, um, you have to specifically find the building, the team responsible for student services at your college or university. So the example I give is because I teach at Hofstra. I don't know if this is going to actually work. Let's see here. Do you guys see the student account services page? Okay, cool. Um, this is what the accommodation page looks like at Hofstra University as just an example. And if you could see here, there's a reasonable accommodations form, a housing form if you need special housing due to your disability. And then when you click through, it will just guide you through on all the documentation that you need to provide the university to um, receive accommodations at the college level. And it is very similar, if not identical, to what you need to provide at the compulsory education level, where you need to provide proof of diagnosis, recommendations from the medical team. At the college level, they're going to want to see a history of accommodation need as well. So, like, just one concrete example, if you never had extended time on tests in high school, okay? And now all of a sudden in college, you're requesting extended time on tests. That's a harder accommodation to justify if you've never needed it in the past. By the time that you're 18, 19 years old, you've had a lot of testing under your belt. If you've never needed that accommodation before, that would be a harder one to provide. But again, the idea is just that you will provide proof of the diagnosis, recommendations based on the medical team and based on your own history of what you've needed, and then you have a meeting with your university team to decide what specific accommodations will be implemented for you. Um, and in the workforce, it's really again a similar process. Start with a conversation with your supervisor or with your human resources and get the documentation requirements that are needed for a 504 plan in your working environment. So we've identified how to do it. Now we got to talk about what accommodations are appropriate. Um, some things to keep in mind. Accommodations and modifications are reactive, not proactive. So, sticking with that example of extended time, um, a child entering kindergarten, we already know is going to need access to formula, access to low protein foods, potentially collecting uneaten portions of low protein food so that we can plan for dinner and any meals eaten after school. What we don't know is, are they going to need extra time on tests? Are they going to need testing in a location with minimal distraction? Are these appropriate accommodations for children with PKU? Yes, they are, particularly if they're very brittle and their Phe levels can fluctuate rapidly. And there may be some days where they have a little bit more brain fog than other days. Um, but we won't know until the child is there in the environment. We need to see the problem first and then respond to it. And just remember, you're creating a legal document between you and the school. It's a contract. Here's what we agree to, here's what you agree to. You're also going to be able to renegotiate that contract at least once a year when you talk and review what the 504 plan is going to look like for the year after. It could be as simple as, I like everything we have going on here. Let's just continue as is, or you can be making major revisions. And if you're starting this process in kindergarten, just be mindful that you may be interacting with the exact same 504 committee for 13 years. A 13-year relationship with a contract negotiation team every single year. Um, as parents, the instinct is always let me get everything, every bit of support I could possibly imagine for my child in place right away. Um, and while I tend to agree with that, and obviously I want that for my daughter, even I've scaled back some of my intentions, knowing that this is a marathon, not a sprint. And knowing that if there is a significant need that presents itself in the future, I will be able to advocate for my daughter and I will be able to get whatever accommodation I think is appropriate added to her 504 plan because I've shown a little bit of two-way trust with the school district, and maybe I don't get everything I'm thinking about on revision one of my daughter's 504 plan. So here is a sample 504 plan. This is for my daughter when she was entering kindergarten. I've removed the identifying information. Um, but I'll tell you all here that this is a sample 504 when my daughter entered kindergarten many years, 2020. And it all pretty much um, speaks for itself. First, the alert, what the identifying condition is, that the child is diagnosed with PKU and requires a low protein diet and special protein rich medical formula with extremely close monitoring of her food intake, and that all uneaten portions of food and formula will be sent home for diet planning. Um, and then in the comments, we delve into that a little bit deeper. The student will have access to meals as required in the medical documentation provided by the student's physician. The parent has requested at least 48 hours notice if a special food is to be eaten or used in the class so that they can provide an alternative food if needed. And the parent will provide a low protein substitute frozen snack stored in the nurse's office in the event that an unscheduled food event occurs. The parent should be notified if an unscheduled food event occurs and the food the student consumed in order to manage your diet. So the idea is, guys, if it's written in the 504 plan, it has to be followed. So again, kind of what the handicapping condition is, some of the requirements based on that handicapping condition, the evidence that was provided to support that need. In this case, it was a letter from me and the letter from my daughter's physician. And then we get into some more nitty gritty that at that age in kindergarten, she had a 3-to-1 shared aid that was provided during lunch, snack, and all food related activity. That the student will only consume food and drink approved and provided by the parent, and all uneaten portions will be sent home each day. That she'll have access to her medical formula during snack and lunch, as well upon student request, and that it will be kept refrigerated in the nurse's office. Any leftover formula will be sent home each day, and that she will have access to recommended meals as per the documentation provided by her physician. And these were meals that the school actually purchased, provided, and prepared as a hot lunch during the school day. So that's an example. And now look, this is of course just my opinion, but that's an example of what a early elementary 504 plan can and should focus on. We want to focus initially on the basic needs of a child with PKU, access to refrigerated formula, breaks for formula if they're needed, an adult aid to assist when food is being served, advance notice of parties or any time that food is being served, and access to low protein food options provided by the school. As a child advances into middle school and high school, as an example, my daughter is entering middle school this year. Her 504 looks a little different. Um, we no longer have an aide. She no longer needs a 3-to-1 aide managing her food intake. She is perfectly capable of storing her uneaten food and bringing it home to us now. Um, but we do have a greater focus on testing accommodations. So, if it's the day of a blood draw, she is able to take an exam the next day, not on the day that her blood was drawn. Um, and if she reports a high fee level, One of the accommodations that we've discussed is that on if we show medical proof of high fee, she'll be able to take the exam on a different day or be given extended time to take that exam. Um, Remember, reactive, not proactive. We need to show that there has been a disruption as a result of this, and we've been able to show that to them. So the idea is as a child advances into middle school and high school, the aid may not be necessary, but you do want to continue access to formula and low protein food. You may want to introduce extended time on tests and assignments. You may need to consider modified homework if the executive functioning is so significant, executive functioning difficulties are so significant that they may need additional, time or need less homework than what is traditionally administered. Tests administered in a location with minimal distraction, a copy of class notes, and again, alternative testing days if fee is high or on the day of a blood draw. Um, and testing accommodations that you uh, use now can be applied to SATs and ACTs. And that's something that guidance counselors in the high schools are very accustomed to doing. If your child has a 504 with these accommodations listed, these carry over. There's a bit of a process getting them approved by the college board, but they carry over to SATs and ACTs as well. At the college, university level, and beyond, we want to make sure that we're maintaining, again, that continued access to low protein formula, particularly if your child is staying in a residence hall. Um, Continue testing accommodations consistent with executive functioning weaknesses. The one and if possible, provision of low protein food in the dining halls. The one thing that you may want to that I do want to note is university criteria varies widely. One school may say we'll give X, Y, and Z, and the next school will say A, B, and C, something totally different. I recommend this to all parents that have a child with some sort of need going into college. You should make the accommodations that the school is going to provide to you part of your acceptance decision. If you're fortunate enough to have a child that's been accepted into two, three, four universities, um, talk to each one of the student centers about your child's handicapping condition, about the accommodations that they've had in the past, and about what accommodations will they provide your child before you accept, and make that a part of the decision. And I know I said this once before, but at this level, at the university level, history of need for accommodation is very important. You need to be able to show that my child has historically needed these accommodations. I'm kind of garden pathing here, but it's an important point. That's why if your child is using something, if your child is getting 25% extended time, it is not sufficient for the school to just unofficially allow your child to have some extended time. It needs to be documented on the 504 plan. If it's not written down, it never happened. You can't go to a university and say, for 10th, 11th, and 12th grade, my child was getting extended time on all the tests. And then the university says, okay, where's the proof of that? And your answer is, oh, it was just like an unofficial, they just kind of let him do it. Not acceptable. If they're using that accommodation, make sure that it is written on the 504 plan. In the workforce, again, accommodations that are possible, a flexible work schedule, a private workspace, access to noise canceling headphones, not verbal instructions written down, breaks and time management strategies, assistive technology to aid in writing reports or doing things, accommodations for attending meetings, time management support. Really, it focuses on the management of diet and the potential executive functioning deficits that a person, an adult with PKU, may encounter. Um, but again, it varies. The older you get, the more wide the needs vary, person to person, and the possibilities really are endless. There are unique circumstances for each and every child, and adult, and you have to just specifically tailor a 504 plan to the unique needs of the specific person. So, I will forward this to everyone. I've given this list out before. These are all 50 states plus Washington, D.C., uh, and giving the website for 504 planning and the rules governing 504 plans. Again, the major caveat to that is um, the way that the federal government is organizing this through the Department of Education and the Office of Civil Rights is rapidly changing. The access and these websites may change, may already have changed. I will give it an update actually before I distribute it to everybody through to that's attending today. Um, and that is really everything, guys. I will take questions now if there are any. I'm going to stop sharing my slides.
So feel free to put some questions in the chat while the audience is thinking of their questions. Um, Eugene, you did a great job sharing about how, all the different people that might participate in a 504 meeting, and also down to like who would be the bare minimum. I'm wondering if you could talk about, do parents have the ability to invite additional guests to that meeting? Would you recommend that? If so, who might that be? And then also whether or not you recommend, is it are the students themselves able to attend those meetings?
That is a great question.
Mhm.
In any of these meetings, whether it's a 504 plan or maybe your child has an IEP instead, the parent is allowed to invite anybody they want. Who you may want to invite, another parent that has a child with a similar medical condition that can help just be another set of ears to advocate on your behalf. You can invite your child's physician if they are willing and able to attend and willing to go beyond just providing written documentation. Um, you know, uh, uh, a counselor or anyone else that works with your child, can, and I've been in meetings where they have attended. And I did touch upon it, but absolutely, I think as children get older, um, it's important for them to attend these meetings as well. Um, Look, the personal decision that we made is that as now that Addie is going into middle school, starting next year, which will be her first kind of review of her 504 plan as a middle schooler, we want her to attend that 504 meeting as well.
Great. Put any questions in?
I,
Yeah, go
I
ahead.
don't see any questions yet. I think I was going to ask Dr. Lubliner, are there instances where, what to do if the school or staff are having challenges meeting the 504 plan stipulations? So I guess if it's one instance or, worst case, multiple instances, what do you do if if you're seeing kind of some, cracks in the infrastructure and that you're having issues with meeting the stipulations that have been agreed upon in the 504 plan?
I think
Actually, we had a question pop in, the same question
yep.
popped in the chat, and with that too, asked specifically, yeah, not providing the accommodations, and also specifically around the food, if they're expecting parent to provide food, even though, they provide food to non-disabled peers, so that they should be able to provide that similar accommodation, but they're not meeting that.
So that the your question and the question, Susie, your question and the question that the person in the chat asked are pretty similar. So let's start with the easier one. If the school is not implementing some basic, consideration that is specifically written in the 504 plan, persistence is the key there. You have to continually remind that school that you're supposed to be providing X, and why is it not happening, and how can we make sure that it occurs in the future. Look, I've run into this situation myself. Addie had a teacher that was not notifying us. It's third grade. When this was a couple years ago. When you're in third grade, birthday parties happen, and the parents don't always tell the teacher, "Oh, I'm bringing in donuts today." or oh, we ended up having an ice cream party today. Um, but what was brought to our attention was the teacher was aware that these events were happening and just not giving us the 2 days notice that we were requesting. Um, at first, it was a conversation with the classroom teacher. When it was not being resolved, it became a wider conversation with the school psychologist and the building principal. And after that, it was resolved. Now, in my specific school district, the school psychologist is the one responsible for overseeing the 504 plans in the building. That may not be the case um, in your building. There could be a district level representative that oversees all 504s K through 12. It could be a social worker, it could be a guidance counselor, it could be the building principal. Um, but obviously, just like um, in any other conflict that you're trying to resolve with someone, start with the person where the conflict resides. If they're not showing a willingness or an ability to address it, then you have to bring in the people that they answer to. And the one thing that's great is in school, there's always someone higher up the chain that you can that you can loop into the conversation. And we weren't confrontational. I don't think it was certainly nothing malicious on that teacher's part. It was just, look, probably, I think this is true for all parents. The teachers that your children have, your child is probably going to be the first and only child with PKU they are ever going to interact with in a professional capacity. Um, and so it's our responsibility to stress the importance of what a child with PKU needs and hold them accountable if they're not fulfilling that obligation. Now, school lunch, different story. Um, Schools are required to provide a school lunch to every child that that enters their school district. They are required to provide a nutritionally complete and comprehensive meal for their child. It is simply not sufficient for a school district to say, "Well, you just bring your child's food in and take care of it yourself." They are required to feed your child a nutritionally appropriate meal. Um, my recommendation is, of course, bringing that concern to them and making and reminding them that they are required to. Um, I don't have access to it right now, but I know that there is some pretty simple, clearly written law, federal legislation out there that shows that children are required to be fed by their schools. And if they're still not willing to engage with you, it may be required that you hire an educational lawyer or someone that can legally represent you to, really create some pressure on the school district to comply with the laws that are already out there.
And I'll add that there is the act that Dr. Lubliner was referring to. We list that on our website, and there's some pieces of our website that talk about the school lunch requirement. And you can always reach out to us directly as well. We're also happy to, something we've done in the past is provide this information directly to a school district just to help, NPKUA has helped educate school districts in that way. So you can always reach out to with questions. I had a question just with the school lunch, Dr. Lubliner, you mentioned that Addie has had that before, hot lunch provided by the school. Did you have to go through any extra steps? How did that, come together for you all? Did you just bring it up to
I,
your committee? Did you have to talk, rope in anyone extra to get that? It's a lot of logistics put together. Just
I,
wondering what the
I,
process was like.
I will say that where I live on Long Island, it's a fairly progressive with the schools. New York State in general is fairly progressive with their education laws and fairly open to accommodating students. My work through NPKUA has really kind of opened my eyes to how difficult this process can be for parents. Um, I'm certainly not trying to brag, but for me, it was literally as simple as we need low protein food served for my daughter at lunch. here's one option. And I showed them the Canebrook lunch program, and they said, okay, great. And day one of kindergarten through today, my daughter has had hot lunch available to her, with really little to no fanfare. Um, I'm in a very small school district. There's only about 120 kids per graduating class. Um, so obviously it's a small lunch team. So right around the second week of August every year, like clockwork, I get an email from the director of our cafeteria services just saying, hey, what foods that we purchased was Addie liking? What didn't she like? Is there anything that she wants to include in the menus now? Um, and it's quite little fanfare. I fully recognize that I'm in the minority there, um, in terms of that experience. But I will say part of it is also just showing up fully prepared. I laid a dictionary down on my school psychologist desk, 3 months before Addie started kindergarten, just bulleting exactly what was needed and what had to be done.
Yeah, and I think regardless, starting with the 504 team, right? They can, whether or not you're a bigger district and you might have a whole office that deals with special diet requests, or,
Hmm.
similar to your experience, or it's a smaller team, a parent should be able to just ask the core 504 team and they can get that process started. I guess the recommendation would be maybe to do it before that initial meeting if there's logistics that need to be set up. So then you have.
Absolutely. You want to just present everything to them before you have any meeting. With that letter, here's the diagnosis, here's the accommodations that we think are appropriate, here's the physician statements backing up those accommodations, here's the importance of why they need to be here. The more prepared you are, the more organized your presentation is to the school district, the less likely it's going to be that they're going to give you any pushback.
And your point of how,
And
how they may not interact with another person that has the exact diet needs. So unfortunately, the burden is on the individual with a rare disease or their caregiver to really communicate all the needs. And don't I think when we live it day in and day out, we sometimes forget the nuances that have to be communicated. So
absolutely.
to dumb it down for them and share everything that you need them to know.
Mhm. And Dr. Lubliner, I know this is all very school district dependent, but do you feel like one of those, I envision you, like you said, you brought that dictionary, you brought, all those materials to that kind of in preparation for kindergarten. Do you feel like um, that after kindergarten, as again, assuming you didn't change districts or anything, that
No, yeah.
eased every year? I think just initially that was the big year, and then from there it eased and everyone
It
understood.
has certainly gotten easier. And now look,
Yeah,
again, part of the advantage on my part is it's a very small school district.
sure.
The psychologist that administers and manages 504 plans is the same guy K through 12. Um, that is certainly not the case even in some of the bigger school districts here on Long Island. Um, um, and the short answer is yes, it will get easier because the idea is you've got a document now that you're basing the next document off of. So you've already laid a foundation, and so building upon that will get easier every year. And the needs of the child um, are much more unique in the beginning than they are in subsequent years. You know, the food piece is always going to be there, but explaining to them why we needed an adult with my daughter during any time food is served and why everything had to be packaged up and preserved and not thrown out, that's a lot of that's counterintuitive to how we operate in a school district. That required a lot of explanation. That's no longer required in the 504 anymore. So as they get older, the type of needs that are put in the 504 are just much more closely approximate all the other 504 plans out there for kids with much more common handicapping conditions.
No, thank you. That's helpful. Thank
Mhm.
you. And I think Stephanie asked, so thank you for joining, Stephanie. So her daughter is 12 months. So Stephanie, I appreciate you joining and just, listening and learning with all of us. So her, knowing that she may not need this as soon as some others, she asked if we plan to hold these 504 educational plan sessions yearly. Thank you, Stephanie, for the question. And I think, yeah, I think
Stephanie,
as long
thank
as
you for
you,
keeping
Dr.
me
Loveliner,
working.
yeah. Yeah, I think, and Sarah, you can certainly tell, I'll let you chime in. I think we know that people have, our community finds these valuable. And Dr. Loveliner obviously is an incredible resource and parent in our community. So, Sarah, I'll let you chime in there too.
Yeah, no, I was just gonna also say, even, for those that need it down the road sooner, and maybe weren't able to make it today, it will also be on our YouTube,
Mhm.
posted within a few days. So, don't feel like you need to remember, take notes of everything that you heard. You can always go back and rewatch, visit it down the road when you're closer to this school years in the future. Hope to have that, as a resource for you going forward as well. I
Great.
did have a personal question. So you
Go
made
ahead.
me think of something that we've never, as Susie mentioned, I have a 15-year-old PKU. So she's also had a 504 plan since kindergarten. I was wondering the logistics, how you use, and something I never thought of doing, that I want to think more about, using the fee levels to kind of guide your accommodation decisions. Now you mentioned that your clinic does intravenous blood draws, so perhaps maybe you get results a little faster than some of us. I'm not sure if
Yeah.
that's the case. But just I'm now thinking about, how do I use, maybe a historical blood draw, and I find out, oh, her level was high on that day she took a test, like maybe an accommodation where, if I can show that that was the case, maybe a retake, or, I'm just wondering logistics of how you use those blood fee levels and
I,
guide your accommodation use.
so I think you worded it perfectly. In your specific example, you'd have to be able to show, look, we took a blood draw. The test was Tuesday. We get our results the Monday after, right? So if I took the test on Tuesday and it ended up that my blood phe levels were high, and I can demonstrate that to you via the results in my chart. Um, you know, can I have extra time or access to a makeup test based on that specific day? Again, though, in my specific situation, and it is a perfect example of how everyone has an individual set of circumstances, because we do intravenous blood draw. Addie gets her blood drawn at 7 a.m. Typically, by like 3 p.m. that day, I have her blood fee level, like, right then and there. Um, so I do have a bit more. I'm a bit more limber in that I can bring that result to them pretty much the next morning, to get that kind of an accommodation put in place. But I think that it would be just as applicable in your circumstance, where if they're doing, like, the filter paper, and you're going to get your results in a few days, you'd be able to show, look, we took this math test on Tuesday. Monday morning, she had a blood draw. Her phe levels are very high. We would request a retake. And it would just be a matter of putting that as a testing accommodation in the 504 plan. And it is that give and take between parent and school, where it would note that it is your responsibility to provide that blood test result. And then subsequent to that, the school's responsibility to provide a makeup.
Great, thanks. Another argument for those home fee monitors.
Yes, it is. Yes, it most certainly is.
Great. It looks like maybe no more questions. If you want to throw another one in the chat, but otherwise, we'll say thank you. This was wonderful.
Guys, this is always my pleasure. I really do. I love this community. So any questions that you ever have moving forward, do not ever hesitate to reach out. The NPKUA knows how to get in touch with me, and I am very open to helping anyone suss out the needs that they have for their kids with this type of planning. I really am. So thank you so much for having me, guys. Again, I really appreciate it.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you, Dr. Lubliner, and thank you to everyone that joined us today. You know, it's a joy to us to bring this information to you. And like Sarah said, we'll be posting it on our YouTube channel so you can see this webinar and previous webinars there as well. So we hope you all have a great week. Dr. Lubliner, thank you.
Thank
And
you, guys.
have a great, successful start to the school year for everybody.
Yes, to everyone, be well.
Yes, thank you.